It is one of the most effective and sometimes one of the easiest performance modifications you can make to your car. Today, we are in the shop and we are talking about anti-roll bars. I said this is one of the easiest modifications you can do to your car. That comes with a little bit of an asterisk because sometimes it's a little more complicated. For example, on our BMW 435i back here, we have to take down both the front and rear subframes because these bars are mounted on top of those subframes. So it's a little more involved. On your car, it might not be so involved, but the good news is the payoff is usually really beneficial for whatever car you're adding them to. Hey, if you want a set of anti-roll bars for your BMW or for your Audi or your VW or a bunch of other brands, check out our friends at 034 Motorsport. This Dynamic Plus anti-roll bar kit ran $701 for the front and the rear, and a very cool set of these amazing machined pillow block bushing holders that have Zerk fittings designed right into them. You can keep these bushings greased, keep them quiet, keep them flexible. Check them out on the web at 034motorsport.com. We'll put a link right down in the description there as well. So how does this thing actually work? What's actually happening? Well, essentially we are coupling the roll from one side of the car to the other. This only comes into play when both sides of the suspension are moving in a different fashion from each other. The center part will be fixed in these bushings that are affixed to the chassis. So the center part will essentially act as a pivot that these lever arms will pivot around. These lever arms are going to be attached to either side of your suspension in the same place on the right and on the left. So if this is attached to the strut housing, this will also be attached to the strut housing. If this is attached to a control arm, this will also be attached to a control arm. It will be attached through an end link to allow this to articulate. When this side is moving, when a force is imparted to this side, if the same force is being imparted to this side, no problem. This isn't doing anything. This is purely hinging on these bushings that are affixed to your chassis. So what happens when something different is happening on both sides of the car? That's when the magic happens. When you put a load into this side, you put the opposite load into this side, which is what happens in a corner. When you go into a corner, the car leans, you compress the outside suspension, you extend the inside suspension. So now all of a sudden you've got different forces acting in this bar that are going to fight each other. Those forces are trying to counteract each other, and the result is the car is simply going to lean less because you have this additional spring acting to counteract that chassis roll, to counteract the compression on this side and the extension on this side. This bar fights against itself to counteract those forces and do its best to negate that roll. Now, there's still going to be, of course, some roll. If this bar was infinitely stiff, there would be zero roll at all, but this bar is not infinitely stiff. In fact, we can see that this bar is thicker than the stock bar that just came off of here. So this bar will be stiffer than this bar would be stiffer than a thinner bar, and so on and so on. The thicker the bar, the thicker the wall thickness, in the case of a hollow bar like this 034 Motorsport bar, the stiffer that bar is going to be, so the more it's going to be able to resist that roll. So what does that all do for us? That's all great. Okay, I know what physical principles are in play here, but what does that all do for us? Well, that is where it gets really complicated, because the answer to what does this anti-roll bar do for me is it depends. In general, we're speaking in very broad general terms, what's going to happen when you increase the roll stiffness through anti-roll bars at one end of the car or the other relative to the other end of the car is you will get a traction gain at the opposite end of the car from where you increase roll stiffness. For example, you will generally get better turn-in, better front bite, less understeer when you add a larger rear sway bar to a car, or when you decrease the size of the front sway bar. You also generally get a little more understeer or a little rear traction when you add a larger front bar to a car or decrease the size of the rear bar. Again, highly generalized. There's a lot of other factors in play. For example, on a powerful front-wheel drive car with no limited slip differential, a large front bar can sometimes help you plant that inside wheel in a corner and get a little bit more traction and get a little bit less wheel spin from a situation like that. There's exceptions to every rule. Again, it's going to be best for you to go out and do your own testing, get a feel for what changes result in sort of what different feel, and experience all of this for yourself. The key here is be prepared that when you bolt these things on, especially when they're adjustable, when you bolt them on, when you head out to the track, that first day is going to be experimentation and not necessarily the end-all be-all of your competition life cycle with these, because any adjustable part just creates more variables, and those variables need to be worked through. So the big thing you're doing to change handling balance is you're changing the relative amount of roll stiffness and essentially the relative amount of force going into the front or rear of the car. Now, are you going to increase overall road holding? Probably yes, but not necessarily from just increasing the stiffness. The big increase in road holding, especially on cars with a McPherson strut design, is generally the fact that the less body roll you have, the less camber loss you're going to have on that outside tire. And camber loss is really one of the biggest sources of lost traction, especially in strut cars. As a car rolls, that strut compresses up into the car. Depending on the camber curve of your individual suspension, chances are you are going to lose camber relative to the road from where you started static. So reducing body roll is naturally going to reduce some of that camber loss. Might not eliminate it completely, but when it comes to retaining that camber and retaining a square footprint of your tire on the road, less body roll is only going to help you maintain that footprint in a solid, stable, perpendicular orientation to the road. And that's where a lot of your additional road holding is going to come from when it comes to using anti-roll bars. So what are some downsides to these? Well, we've got some complications that we are going to be watching out for in our BMW here as we go through the process with these 034 Motorsport bars. Now, we've increased bar stiffness dramatically at both ends, but most dramatically at the rear. In fact, I'll give you some actual numbers. So our front bar is three-way adjustable. In its softest setting, it is 62% stiffer than the stock M Sport bar that came off of our car. Middle setting, 72% stiffer. Stiffest setting, it is 85% stiffer than the stock bar that we're taking off of there. This is a 30 millimeter diameter hollow bar, so a lot more stiffness than the stock bar we took off of there. In the rear, however, we are considerably increasing the roll stiffness. In fact, our rear bar is two-way adjustable. It is a 22 millimeter bar from 034 Motorsport. In its softest setting, 315% stiffer than stock. In its stiffest setting, 390% stiffer than stock. So that is a considerable increase in roll stiffness that we are adding to the rear. Now, I am very, very excited about that increase in roll stiffness and what it's going to bring to this naturally front-heavy understeering car. I think we're going to get a lot better front bite, a lot better front road holding, but there could be a trade-off. Remember when I talked to you about when this side pulls up, this side also pulls up? Well, you notice that very much in front-wheel drive cars. If you ever see a fast front-wheel drive car on track, if they're running a real stiff rear bar, you'll see that inside rear wheel hiked up all the way off the ground because there's so much roll stiffness in the rear. It's bringing that inside rear wheel right up off the ground. Now, a front-wheel drive car, the rear wheels, they're just there for show, man. They aren't really doing anything. This car, a rear-wheel drive car with no mechanical limited slip differential, we could be opening a can of worms here as far as rear traction. So we could gain a little bit of grip, a little bit of turn in handling, but going to a much stiffer rear bar. We also could be opening up ourselves to the fact that maybe we need to address traction issues coming out of corners. We have our front and rear anti-roll bars installed on our BMW. So you know what? It is time to head to the track, see how it feels, and see how it performs with our data system. Guess what? We are back from the track and we've got some exciting stuff to share with you from the V-Box data system. So before we start analyzing all this data, let's talk about the fact that installing any adjustable suspension part on your car is not a solution, it is a path to a solution. And what you've done is you've introduced the potential for more performance, not necessarily more performance out of the box. That said, we did notice some really, really cool things on the data that we'll see in just a minute, but also understand that you have now brought yourself into a process, not just installed a product. Whenever you've got adjustable tuning aids, you need to adjust those, you need to test, you need to experiment to get the most out of them. Now, that said, we noticed some very, very cool things, both in the feel of the car and in the objective performance of the car, measured with our V-Box data equipment, that I would love to share with you. Okay, so here are the V-Box data charts from both our testing prior to installation of the 034 Motorsport anti-roll bars and after. Now, let's not get too hung up on minutia here because we're testing these cars, or testing this car actually, different dates, different track conditions, but we can spot some really, really cool trends. So first thing I'll say is the green trace is the speed trace for the car post-bar installation. Red trace is the speed trace for the car pre-bar installation. So that's what we're looking at here. And the first thing I see is two very similar traces, but with some really delightfully surprising pushes upward on the green trace. For example, we've got a lot more speed here through this turn 8 area, a little more speed here through the turn 4 area, and a little bit earlier back to the throttle here in the turn 1 and turn 2 area. Now we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive and look at these more closely. But what we're seeing is in areas of long cornering and in this turn 4 area, areas of even short, not sustained, but sort of quick transitional cornering, we're seeing a lot more grip, especially in these long, sustained cornering areas. So let's take a little bit of a closer look. Most impressive is here in turn 8, where we've got a lot of sustained cornering going on. Turn-in speed is quicker, it's over 2 miles an hour faster, and sustained speed through the corner, we're looking at 2, 3, even 4 miles an hour faster through this long section of turn 8 up here with those bars in place. So what's happening is what we hoped and what we expected to happen is we're transferring weight more evenly between the front and the back. We've got a more stable platform that's maintaining the static camber that we've built into the car, so it's maintaining a more steady contact patch on the road, which is resulting in more grip, which is all the things that you want a sway bar to do when it's working optimally. Let's take a look here. We'll turn on our lateral acceleration, and we'll also see that we are picking up quite a bit of lateral G in this turn 8 section here. I mean, we've got differences of steadily 2, even 3/10 of a G just in pure cornering force going through that turn 8 area. From behind the wheel, the car really feels good. It almost feels at this point like we've sort of run out of horsepower in areas because we have so much additional grip. It's not a hugely powered car to begin with, but we're seeing in a lot of spots that we're able to get to full throttle much earlier than we were before. And especially mid-corner, the car is very reactive, it's very responsive, and it's very easy to make very small corrections and maintain momentum through those corners, which as we add grip is going to be even that much more important, because we're not going to be able to use the throttle as much to adjust the attitude of the car the way we could when we didn't have as much pure grip. Our grip is beginning to overwhelm our engine, and that's kind of not a bad problem to have, at least when it comes to predictability and stability and fun. I mean, it's fun to slide cars around, don't get me wrong, but it's not always the fastest way to get around a corner. Was it worth it? Yeah, you know what? I would say it absolutely was worth it. Did not compromise ride quality on the road at all, and definitely upgraded our track performance, and has certainly upgraded our tunability on track, which is going to be a long-term benefit as we continue to develop this car and adapt it to whatever situation we happen to be facing at whatever track we happen to be running on. So if you want to know more about all of the stuff we're doing here at Grassroots Motorsports Magazine, with any of our project cars, with any of the stuff either in the print magazine or online, check us out on the web at grassrootsmotorsports.com. Before you leave, if you enjoyed this video, please go right down below here and give it a like. Subscribe to our channel while you're at it, and you will get first crack at all of the stuff we are doing here on YouTube. We appreciate you stopping by. Cannot wait to see you next time with your adjustable anti-roll bars at the track.
Want to see more content like this? Make sure to hit that subscribe button and like this video. And for more information, visit us online at grassrootsmotorsports.com.